Stanza 3. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within without, like the bud of the lotus. The vibration sweeps along, touching simultaneously with its swift wing the whole universe, and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. Darkness radiates light, and the light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal periodical germ which condenses into the world egg. Then the three, the triangle, fall into the four, the quaternary. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of mother, the root that grows in the ocean of life. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still Father-Mother is one. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, or Father and Mother, the unmanifested Logos. Behold, O pupil, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled effulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, which emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is the new life, the manifested Logos, the Word. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is 4, and 4 takes to itself 3, and the union produces the 7, in whom the 7 which become the host and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, stars, and turns the upper space into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested element into the great waters. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, O pupil? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden Father. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat which yields water, the water of life in the great Mother, space. Father-Mother spin a web, the universe, whose upper end is fastened to spirit, and the lower one to its, the spirit's, shadowy end, matter. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances, made in one which is spirit matter, Father, Mother. It, the web, expands when the breath of fire, the Father, is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the Mother, the ether, touches it. Then the suns, the elements, and their intelligences dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When it, the web, is cooling, it becomes radiant, and the suns expand and contract to their own cells and hearts. They embrace infinitude. Then Father, Mother, Spirit, Matter, send intelligent force to harden the atoms. Each stanza 3 is a part of the web, the universe, The last reflecting vibration of the seventh eternity primeval light drills through infinitude. Like a mirror, each becomes internal world, expanding from within, without, like the bud of the lotus. The seemingly paradoxical use of the phrase seventh eternity, thus dividing the indivisible, is sanctioned in esoteric philosophy, which divides boundless duration into unconditionally eternal and universal time and conditioned time. One is the abstraction or noumenon of finite time, the other its phenomenon, appearing periodically as the effect of universal intelligence limited by cyclic law. Therefore, the last vibration of the seventh eternity was foreordained by no God in particular, but occurred in virtue of the eternal and changeless law, which causes the great periods of activity and rest, called so graphically and so poetically the days and nights of Brahma. The expansion from within without of the mother who is called elsewhere, the waters of space, the universal matrix, etc., does not allude to an expansion from a small center or focus, but without reference to size or limitation or area, means the development of limitless subjectivity into as limitless objectivity. The ever to us invisible and immaterial substance present in eternity threw its periodical shadow from its own plane into the lap of illusion. This implies that this expansion was not an increase in size, for infinite extension admits of no enlargement, but a change of condition. It expanded like the bud of the lotus, for the lotus plant exists not only as a miniature embryo in its seed, but its prototype is present in an ideal form in the astral light from dawn to night of the great cycle. Like everything else, as a matter of fact, in this objective universe, from man down to mite, from giant trees down to the tiniest blades of grass, all these teaches the hidden science, is but the temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal prototype in the divine thought, the word eternal. Note well again, standing here only in the sense of eon, the seemingly interminable but still limited cycle of activity called by us manvantara. For what is the real esoteric meaning of manvantara, or rather manu antara? It means esoterically between two manus, of whom there are 14 in every day of Brahma, a day consisting of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, or 1,000 great ages, Mahayugas. Orientalists tell us that the term manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But esoterically, every manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine. Each of the manus, therefore, being the special god, creator, and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being, or manvantara. The life spirit runs their errands and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from within, without, that is, to cross gradually on a descending scale all the planes from the noumenon to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally, on the last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion, or the grossest matter. Stanza 3. Continued. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing simultaneously the whole universe, and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. The idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life, which is primordial matter with a latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahmanical Narayama, the mover on the waters, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious, all of the Eastern occultists. The waters of life, or chaos, the female principle in symbolism, are the vacuum to our mental perception, in which lie latent spirit and matter. This it was that made Democritus assert after his instructor Leucippus that the primordial principles of all were atoms in a vacuum, in the sense of space, but not of empty space, for nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Peripatetics and other ancient philosophers. In all cosmogonies, water plays the same important part. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing, understand by water the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen, thus giving a specific meaning to a term used by occultists in a generic sense, and which is used in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. Stanza 3, continued. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill, and drop the non-eternal periodical germ which condenses into the world egg. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken as divine thought or intelligence, impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the plane of metaphysical abstraction, or rather on the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality, the virgin egg being in one sense abstract eggness, or the power becoming developed through fecundation, is eternal and forever the same. And just as the fecundation of an egg takes place before it is dropped, so that it contains all its possibilities of development before it comes into the external world, so the non-eternal periodical germ which becomes later in symbolism the mundane egg contains in itself the promise and potency of all the universes. The simile of an egg also expresses the fact taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifested from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spheroidal, the sphere or circle having been with all nations the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize its full meaning, however, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. The field of vision or of thought is like a sphere whose radii proceed from oneself in every direction and extend out into space, opening up boundless vistas all round. It is the symbolical circle of Pascal and the Kabbalist, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of this emblem. The mundane egg is perhaps one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive as it is, alike in the spiritual and physiological and cosmological sense. Therefore, it is found in every world theogony, where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the emblem of eternity, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as of wisdom. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, the egg repeating in miniature the process of cosmic evolution, both being due to heat under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, justified fully the selection of this graphic symbol. The virgin egg is the microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic prototype, the Virgin Mother, chaos, or the primeval deep. The male creator, under whatever name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root, fructified by the ray. Cosmos as receptive nature is an egg, fertilized, yet left immaculate. Once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a spheroid. The golden egg, or luminous egg, as it is sometimes called, was surrounded by 7 natural elements, 4 ready, 3 secret: ether, fire, air, water. These pre-cosmic elements are but the germs of those we know. Stanza 3, continued. Then the 3, the triad, fall into the 4, the quaternary. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, the 3 aspects of the creative spirit, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of the mother, the root that grows in the ocean of life. The use of geometrical figures and the frequent allusion to figures in all ancient scriptures, see the Puranas, the Egyptian papyri, the Book of the Dead, and even the Bible, must be explained. In the Book of Zion, as in the Kabbalah, there are 2 kinds of numerals to be studied: the figures, often simply blinds, and the sacred numbers, the values of which are all known to the occultist through initiation. The former are but a conventional glyph, the latter the basic symbols of all. That is to say, the one is purely physical, the other purely metaphysical, the 2 standing to each other as a matter to spirit, the extreme poles of the one substance. As Balzac, the unconscious occultist of French literature, says, and Louis Lambert, number is the mind the same as it is to matter, an incomprehensible agent, perhaps so to the profane, but never to the initiated mind. Number is, as the great writer thought, an entity, and at the same time a breath emanating from what he called God, and we call the All, the breath which alone could organize the physical cosmos, where naught obtains its form but through the deity which is an effect of number. God is a number endowed with motion, which is felt but not demonstrated. As unity, it begins the numbers, with which it has nothing in common. The existence of number depends on unity, which without a single number begets them all. What would you think were I to add that motion and number are begotten by the word? Number truly, but never motion. It is motion which begets the logos, the word, in occultism. The radiant essence curdled and spread throughout the depths of space. From an astronomical point of view, this is easy of explanation. It is the Milky Way, the world's stuff, or primordial matter, in its first form. It is more difficult, however, to explain it in a few words or even lines, from the standpoint of occult science and symbolism, as it is the most complicated of glyphs. Herein are enshrined more than a dozen symbols. To begin with, there is the whole pantheon of mysterious objects, the 14 precious things, every one of them having some definite occult meaning extracted from the allegorical churning of the ocean by the Hindu gods. Besides Amrita, the water of life or immortality, Surabhi, the cow of plenty, called the fountain of milk and curds, was extracted from this sea of milk. Hence the universal adoration of the cow and the bull. One the productive, the other the generative. Power in nature, symbols connected with both the solar and the cosmic deities. The specific properties for occult purposes of the 14 precious things, being explained only at the 4th initiation, cannot be given here, but the following may be said. In the Satapatha Brahmana, it is stated that the churning of the ocean of milk took place in the Golden Age, the first stage after the deluge. As, however, neither the Rig Veda nor Manu mention this deluge, although both preceded by Vaisvata's deluge, which destroyed the bulk of the fourth race, it is evident that it is not the great deluge, nor that which carried away Atlantis, nor even the flood of Noah, that is meant here. This churning relates to a period before the Earth's formation and is in direct connection with that other universal legend of which the various and contradictory versions culminated in the Christian dogma of the war in heaven and the fall of the angels. Stanza 3, continued. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still Father-Mother is one. In the original Oiha Hohu, Oiha Hohu is rendered Father-Mother of the gods. In the commentaries, or in the 6 in 1, or the septenary root from which all proceeds, all depends upon the accent given to the 7 vowels of this mystic name, which may be pronounced as 1, 3, or even 7 syllables, by adding an E after the letter O. The name is given out because without a thorough mastery of the triple pronunciation, it remains forever ineffectual. In the original Oiha Hu refers to the non-separateness of all that lives and has its being, whether in the active or the passive state. In one sense, Father-Mother is the rootless root of all. In another sense, it is the name for the manifested one life, the eternal living unity, the root. The root means, as already explained, pure knowledge, eternal unconditioned reality, whether we call it pre-cosmic ideation or pre-cosmic substance. For these are the 2 aspects of the one. The light is the same omnipresent spiritual ray, which has entered and now fertilizes the divine egg, and caused cosmic matter to begin its long series of differentiations. The curds are the first differentiation, and probably refer also to that cosmic matter which is supposed to be the origin of the Milky Way, the matter we know. This matter, according to the revelation received from the first divine teachers during the periodical sleep of the universe, of the ultimate tenuity conceivable to the sight of the perfect seer, and radical and cool at the first reawakening of cosmic motion, is scattered through space, appearing when seen from the earth in clusters and lumps like curds in thin milk. These are the seeds of the future worlds, the star stuff. Stanza 3, continued. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water of Father and Mother. The essence of darkness being absolute light, darkness is taken as the appropriate symbol of the condition of the universe during the term of absolute rest or non-being, as it appears to our finite minds. The fire, heat, and motion here spoken of are not, of course, the fire, heat, and motion of physical science, but the underlying abstractions, the noumena or soul of the essence of these material manifestations, the things in themselves, which, as modern science confesses, entirely elude the instruments of the laboratory and which even the mind cannot grasp, though it can as little avoid the conclusion that these underlying essences of things must exist. According to the Rosicrucian tenets, as explained by the profane for once correctly, if only partially, light and darkness are identical in themselves, being only divisible in the human mind. And according to Robert Flood, darkness adopted illumination in order to make itself visible. Actually, according to the tenets of Eastern occultism, darkness is the one true actuality, the basis and the root of light, without which the latter could never manifest itself nor even exist. Light is matter, and darkness pure spirit. Darkness, in its radical metaphysical basis, is subjective and absolute light, while light, in all its seeming effulgency and glory, is merely a mass of shadows and an illusion. Even in the mind-baffling and science-harassing Genesis, light is created out of darkness, and not vice versa. In him, in darkness, was life, and life was the light of men. A day may come when the eyes of men will be opened, and then they will comprehend better than they do now that verse in the Gospel of John that says, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not." They will see then that the word darkness does not apply to man's spiritual eyesight, but indeed to darkness the absolute, that comprehendeth not, cannot cognize, transient light, however transparent to human eyes. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel who sprang from the depths of chaos was called Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning, or cyclic dawn. Fire and water, or father and mother, may be taken here to mean the divine ray in chaos. Behold, O pupil, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory, bright space, son of darkness, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is the new life, the manifested Logos. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is four, and four takes to itself three, and the union produces the seven, which become the thrice 10, the hosts and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from the east to the west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, the stars, and turns the upper space into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested element in the great waters. A bright space, son of darkness, corresponds to the ray dropped at the first thrill of the new dawn into the great cosmic depths, from which it emerges differentiated as the new life. Oiha-o'u, the younger and the original, to become the end of the life cycle, the germ of all things. He is called the blazing dragon of wisdom, because, firstly, he is that which the Greek philosophers called the Logos, the word of the thought divine, and secondly, because in esoteric philosophy this first manifestation, being the synthesis or aggregate of universal wisdom, the son of the sun, Oiha-o'u, contains in himself the seven creative hosts, and is thus the essence of manifested wisdom. He who bathes in the light of the Logos will never be deceived by the veil of illusion. The dragon of wisdom is the one. The one and the dragon are expressions used by the ancients in connection with their respective logoi. Jehovah, esoterically as Elohim, is also the serpent or dragon that tempted Eve. And the dragon is an old glyph for the astral light, the primordial principle of matter, which is the wisdom of chaos. Archaic philosophy, recognizing neither good nor evil as independent powers, but starting from the absolute or universal perfection, traced both principles through the course of natural evolution to pure light condensing gradually into form and thus becoming matter or evil. It was left with the early and ignorant Christian fathers to degrade the philosophical idea of the dragon into the absurd superstition called the devil. But the pagans have always known a philosophical discrimination in their symbols. The primitive serpent symbolized divine wisdom and perfection, and always stood for cyclical regeneration and immortality. Hence, Hermes called the serpent the most spiritual of all beings. Moses initiated in the wisdom of Hermes. Following suit in Genesis, the Gnostic serpent with the 7 vowels over its head was the emblem of the 7 hierarchies of the planetary creators. Hence also the Hindu serpent Sesha, or Ananta, the infinite, a name of Vishnu, whose first vehicle on the primordial waters was this serpent. Like the logoi and the hierarchies of powers, however, the serpents have to be distinguished from one another. Sesha or Ananta is an allegorical abstraction, symbolizing infinite time and space, whereas the Gnostic Ophis contained the same triple symbolism in its 7 vowels as the 1, 3, and 7-syllabled Oiha Ho'u of the archaic doctrine. The one manifested Logos, the second manifested the triad concreting into the quaternary, and the rays of the latter on the material plane. So was a difference always made between the good and the bad serpent, between the embodiment of divine wisdom in the regions of the spirit and the astrolight of the Kabbalist, the embodiment of evil on the plane of matter. The astral light or ether of the ancients is spirit matter. Beginning with the pure spiritual plane, it becomes grosser, as it descends till it becomes illusion, the tempting and deceitful serpent on our plane. Jesus accepted the serpent as a synonym of wisdom. Be ye wise as serpents, he said. The Spirit of God moving on chaos was symbolized in every nation by a fiery serpent breathing fire and light upon the primordial waters, until it had incubated cosmic matter and made it assume the annular shape of a serpent with its tail in its mouth, which symbolizes not only eternity and infinitude, but also the globular shape of all the bodies formed within the universe from that fiery mist. The universe, and also earth and man, cast off periodically their old skins, serpent-like, to assume new ones after a period of rest. The serpent is surely no less poetical an image than the caterpillar, from whose chrysalis springs the butterfly, the emblem of the soul. The dragon was the symbol of the Logos with the Egyptians, as with the Gnostics. In the book of Hermes, Pymander, the oldest and most spiritual of the Western Logi, appears to Hermes in the shape of a fiery dragon, of light, fire, and flame. Pymander, the personified thought divine, says, "The light is me. I am the nous, or mind. I am thy God. I am far older than the human principle which escapes from the shadow, darkness, or the concealed deity. I am the germ of thought, the resplendent word, the Son of God. All that thus sees and hears in thee is the word of the Master. It is the thought which is God, the Father, the 7th principle in cosmos and man. The celestial ocean, the ether, is the breath of the Father, the life-giving principle, the Mother, the Holy Spirit. For these are not separated, and their union is life." Here we find the unmistakable echo of the archaic secret doctrine, as now expounded. Only that does not place as the head of the evolution of life the Father, who comes third and is the Son of the Mother, but the eternal and ceaseless breath of the All. The sea of fire is then the super-astral noumenal. Light, the first radiation from the undifferentiated cosmic substance, which becomes astral matter. It is also called the fiery serpent, as above. If the student bear in mind that there is but one universal element which is infinite, unborn and undying, and that all the rest are but so many differentiated aspects and correlations of that one, from cosmical down to microcosmical effects, the totality, in short, of objective existence, then the first and chief difficulty will disappear, and occult cosmology may be mastered. All the Kabbalists, Eastern and Western, recognize first the identity of Father-Mother with primordial ether, or the astral light, and secondly, its homogeneity before the evolution of the sun, in the cosmic sense, Fohat, or cosmic electricity. Fohat hardens and scatters the seven brothers, which means that the primordial electric entity, for the Eastern occultist insists that electricity is an entity, electrifies into life and separates primordial stuff or pregenetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all. Life, all life, and consciousness. There exists a universal soul agent of all forms and of life that is called Od, Ob, Aur, active and passive, positive and negative, like day and night. It is the first light in creation. Eliphas Levi's Kabbalah, Od, is the pure life-giving light or magnetic fluid. Ob, the messenger of death, used by sorcerers, the nefarious evil fluid. Aur is the synthesis of the two, the astral light proper, the first light of the primordial Elohim, or scientifically, electricity and life. The ancients represented it by a serpent, for Fohat hisses as he glides hither and thither in zigzags. The Kabbalah represents it by the letter D, Tet, whose symbol is the serpent that played such a prominent part in the mysteries. Its universal value is 9, for it is the 9th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the 9th door of the 50 portals or gateways that lead to the concealed mysteries of being. It is the magical agent par excellence, and designates in the Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things, and the spirit that determines their form. It was not Zeno alone, the founder of the Stoics, who taught that the universe evolves when its primary substance is transformed from the state of fire into that of air, then water, etc. Heraclitus of Ephesus maintained that the one principle that underlies all phenomena in nature is fire. The intelligence that moves the universe is fire, and fire is intelligence. And while Anaximenes said the same of air and Thales of Miletus, 600 BC, of water, the esoteric doctrine reconciles all these systems by showing that though all were right, none was complete. Stanza 3 continued. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, O pupil? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant son of the dark hidden Father. The answer to the first question suggested by the second, which is the reply of the teacher to the pupil, contains in a single phrase one of the most essential truths of occult philosophy. It indicates the existence of things imperceptible to our physical senses, which are of far greater importance, more real, and more permanent than those that appeal to these senses themselves. Before the pupil can hope to understand the transcendentally metaphysical problem contained in the first question, he must be able to answer the second, while the very answer he gives to the second will furnish him with the clue to the correct reply to the first. In the Sanskrit commentary on this stanza, the terms used for the concealed and unrevealed principle are many. In the earliest Indian manuscript, this unrevealed abstract deity has no name. It is called generally that, and means all that is, was, and will be, or that can be so received by the human mind. Among such appellations, given of course only in esoteric philosophy, it is also called the Kali Hamsa, the black swan. The same word may be read Kalahamsa, answering to the biblical I am that I am. It is useless to attempt to explain the mystery of this name in full. In order to obtain a clear understanding of it, one has first of all to admit the postulate of a universally diffused, omnipresent, eternal deity in nature. Secondly, to have fathomed the mystery of electricity in its true essence. And thirdly, to credit man with being the septenary symbol on the terrestrial plane of the one great unit, the Logos, which is itself the seven-voweled sign, the breath crystallized into the Word. He who believes in all this has also to believe in the multiple combination of the 7 planets of occultism and of the Kabbalah, with the 12 zodiacal signs, and to attribute, as we do, to each planet and to each constellation an influence which is proper to it, beneficent or maleficent. Since few believe in all this, all that can now be given is that the symbol Hamsa or Hansa, whether I, he, goose, or swan, is an important symbol representing, for instance, divine wisdom, wisdom in darkness beyond the reach of man. For all exoteric purposes, Hansa, as every Hindu knows, is an allegorical bird, which when given milk mixed with water for its food, separated the two, drinking the milk and leaving the water, thus showing inherent wisdom, milk being the symbol of spirit and water of matter. The swan or goose or pelican, it does not matter which, is then some aquatic bird floating or moving like the spirit on the waters, and then issuing from those waters to give birth to other beings. The true mystic significance of the symbol being the idea of a universal matrix figured by the primordial waters of the deep, opening for the reception and subsequently for the issue of that one ray, the Logos, which contains in itself the other 7 creative rays or powers, the Logoi or builders. Appearing with every new cycle of life as the self-existent and penetrating into the mundane egg, the ray emerges from it at the end of the divine incubation as the progenitor of the future universe into which it expands. Stanza 3 continued. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother. It must be remembered that the words light, fire, and flame, used in the stanzas, have been adopted by the translators from the vocabulary of the old fire philosophers, not the medieval alchemists, but the magi and fire worshippers, from whom the successors of the Thergists borrowed all their ideas of fire as a mystic and divine element. This was done in order to render better the meaning of the archaic terms and symbols employed in the original. All these, light, flame, heat, cold, fire, water, and the water of life, are all on our plane the progeny, or as a modern physicist would say, the core relations of electricity. Mighty word, and a still mightier symbol. Sacred generator of a no less sacred progeny, of fire, the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer, of light, the essence of our divine ancestors, of flame, the soul of all things, electricity, the one life at the upper rung of being, the astral fluid, the athanor of the alchemist, at its lowest, God and devil, good and evil. Now why is light called in the stanzas cold flame? because in the order of cosmic evolution, as taught by the occultists, the energy that actuates matter after its first formation into atoms is generated on our plane by cosmic heat, and because cosmos, in the sense of dissociated or unformed matter, was not before that period. The first primordial matter, eternal and coeval with space, is neither hot nor cold, but is of its own special nature, says the commentary. Heat and cold are relative qualities, and pertain to the realms of the manifested worlds, which all proceed from the manifested Heil, or matter. This, in its absolutely latent aspect, is referred to as the cold virgin, and when awakened to life, as the mother. Primordial matter, then, before it awakens to the thrill of action under the impulse of cosmic electricity, is but a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid of every quality and aspect. Even such are her firstborn, the four sons, who are one and become seven. These are the entities by whose qualities and names the ancient Eastern occultists called four of the seven primal centers of force, or atoms, that developed later into the great cosmic elements, now divided into the 70 or more sub-elements known to science. The four primal natures of the first creative forces are the so-called, for want of better terms, akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery, answering in the terminology of practical occultism to scientific definitions of gases, which, to convey a clear idea to both occultist and layman, must be defined as parahydrogenic, para meaning beyond, paraoxyhydrogenic, and ozonic or perhaps nitrozonic. The latter forces or gases in occultism, supersensuous yet atomic substances, being the most effective and active when energizing on the plane of more grossly differentiated matter. These are both electropositive and electronegative. Each of these and many more are probably the missing links of chemistry. They are known by other names in alchemy and to the occultists who practice in phenomena. It is by combining and recombining in a certain way, or dissociating the elements by means of astral fire, that the greatest phenomena are produced. Stanza 3 continued. Father, mother, spin a web, whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to matter, its, the spirit's, shadowy end. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is spirit matter. In the Madhukya Upanishad, it is written, as a spider throws out and retracts his web, as herbs spring up in the ground, so is the universe derived from the undecaying one. Brahma, the creative deity, as the germ of unknown darkness, is the material from which all evolves and develops, as the web from the spider, as foam from the water, etc. This is only graphic and true if Brahma the creator is as a term derived from the root bri, to increase or expand. Brahma, here equivalent to father-mother, expands and becomes the universe woven out of his own substance. The same idea has been beautifully expressed by Goethe, who says, thus at the roaring loom of time I ply and weave for God the garment thou seest him by. Stanza 3 continued. It, the web, expands when the breath of fire, the father, is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the mother, the root of matter, touches it. Then the sons, the elements, with their respective powers or intelligences, dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When the web, is cooling, it becomes radiant. Its suns expand and contract to their own selves and hearts. They embrace infinitude. The expanding universe under the breath of fire is very suggestive in the light of the fire mist period, of which modern science says so much and in reality knows so little. Great heat breaks up the compound elements and resolves the heavenly bodies into their primeval one element, explains the commentary. Once disintegrated into its primal constituent, by getting within the attraction of a focus of heat, center of energy, of which many are carried about in space, a body, whether alive or dead, will be vaporized and held in the bosom of the mother until Fohat, cosmic electricity, gathering a few of the clusters of cosmic matter, nebulae, together, will give it an impulse and set it in motion anew, develop the required heat, and then leave it to follow its own laws of growth. The expanding and contracting of the web, i.e., the world stuff or atoms, expresses here the pulsatory movement, or it is the regular contraction and expansion of the infinite and shoreless ocean of what we may call the noumenon of matter, which causes the universal vibration of atoms. But it is also suggestive of something else. It shows that the ancients were acquainted with the puzzles of many modern astronomers, the cause of the first ignition of matter, or the world stuff, the paradox of the heat produced by refrigerative contraction, and other such cosmic enigmas. There is heat internal and heat external in every atom, say the commentaries to which the writer has had access. The breath of the Father or Spirit and the breath or heat of the Mother matter. And they give explanations which show that the modern theory of the extinction of solar fires by loss of heat through radiation is erroneous. For as Professor Newcomb points out, by losing heat a gaseous body contracts, and the heat generated by the contraction exceeds that which it had to lose in order to produce the contraction. This paradox led to long disputes. Contraction develops heat, it was argued, but contraction from cooling is incapable of developing the whole amount of heat at any time existing in the mass, or even of maintaining a body at a constant temperature, etc. Professor Winchell tries to reconcile the paradox by suggesting something besides heat. May it not be, he asks, simply a repulsion among the molecules, which varies according to some law of the distance? But even this will be found irreconcilable unless this something besides heat is ticketed, causeless heat, the breath of fire, the all-creative force, plus absolute intelligence, which physical science is not likely to accept. However this may be, the explanation of this stanza shows it to be even more scientific than modern science. Stanza 3 continued. Then Father Mother send Fohat, intelligent force, to harden the atoms. Each of these is part of the web, universe, reflecting the self-existent Lord, primeval light. Like a mirror, each becomes in turn a world. Fohat hardens the atoms by infusing energy into them. He scatters the atoms of primordial matter. He scatters himself by scattering matter into atoms. It is through this agency that the ideas of the universal mind are impressed upon matter. Some faint idea of the nature of Fohat may be gathered from the appellation cosmic electricity sometimes applied to it. But to the commonly known properties of electricity must in this case be added others, including intelligence. It is of interest to note that modern science has come to the conclusion that all cerebration and brain activity are attended by electrical phenomena. This is said in the sense that the flame of a lamp or fire is inexhaustible, and that the lights of the whole universe could be lit at one simple rushlight without diminishing its flame.